Hi, welcome to Tabs over Spaces. In this tutorial, we will learn about functions. Before getting started, if you have written something like this in your code, you have used functions. Functions are pretty simple once you understand every concept. So, let's get started. In this video, we will briefly see what is a program and what is a function. We will also learn how to implement functions in a program and the 4 ways to write a function with some examples. We will also know how to shorten the code. And I have seen many people being confused about void main and int main. I will clear this doubt at the end of this video. So let's begin. As you might know, a program is a set of instructions. We divide this program into various functions which performs a specific task. To implement functions, we need to do 3 things in our program. The first step is declaring the function. The second step is calling the function. The third step is defining the function. Now, let's see how to declare, call, and define a function. Function declaration tells the compiler about the function's name, its parameters, and its return type. The syntax of function declaration is pretty simple. First there's return type, then comes the function name, and then argument list in a pair of parentheses followed by the semicolon. We'll discuss more about return type and argument list in a minute, but for now just remember the syntax. Here's an example. Return type can vary with different data types like int, float, char, or any other data types. Function name is given by the user. Note that passing argument is not compulsory, but if you wish to pass any argument, we can mention only its data type in the function call. If there's more than one argument to pass, we can mention them separated with comma. Now, if you have a question like what is passing argument, we will learn about that in the upcoming slides. Function definition is the part where you define your function. That is, you can assign a specific task to this function. Assigning a task simply means writing some code in this function. The syntax is similar to function declaration except that there is no semicolon at the end but a pair of braces where you define the function by writing the code in this function. Here is an example. This is a return type and this is the function name. Note the slight changes in the argument list. In function definition, you not only provide the data type but also provide the variable name for the arguments. As I said earlier, we will learn about passing arguments and returning variables in the upcoming slides. Now, let's learn about function call. A function call calls the defined function. A function call should be done in some or the other functions. For example, the main function. We can also call another function in any other functions, for example, here or in the main function. This is a syntax and an example of the function call. This is the function name. Note the changes in the argument list. In function call, you only specify the variable name, but not specify its data type. The best way to know the ways to write a function is by taking an example. Let's take an example of a function add. Let's call the add function in the main function. Now, if we declare variables in the main function, we need to pass these variables to the add function. We do this by specifying the argument list in the function call. The argument list passed will be reflected in the function definition. Now, in add function, we will use these arguments to perform a specific task, that is addition. Let's say we have stored the result of the task in the variable sum. We can return this variable back to the main function by a keyword return. To store the returned variable, we need a container variable in the main function. the value of sum is stored in this container variable. Now, if we print the container variable, it displays the result of a task done by the add function. Notice that we have passed arguments and we have returned a variable. This is one way to write a function. Now, instead of returning sum, we can print it in the add function itself. Note that if we do this, we are not returning any variable. So the container variable serves no purpose. Notice that here there is no return statement but arguments are passed. This is another way to write a function. Passing an argument is not mandatory. We can simply declare the variables in the add function to avoid passing of variables. Notice here arguments are not passed and there is no return statement. This is another way to write a function. Now we can also return the sum to the main function. If we are returning a variable to the main function, we need a container variable. Notice here that the arguments are not passed but the add function is returning sum. This is another way to write a function. Now we have looked at different ways to write a function. Let's look at them one by one in brief. This is with return and with argument. This is without return but with argument. This is with return but without argument. And this is without return and without argument. Now you can pause the video and analyze these four ways. I hope you have understood about the different ways of writing a function. Now, since you know the concepts of passing a parameter and returning a variable, let me explain you how to write the function declaration, function call, and the function definition. Suppose a and b are the two variables that I want to add. So I'm passing them to the add function. Let's say we have declared a as int, and also since a is the first argument passed, so the first argument in the function definition should also be declared as int. In the same way, if b is declared as int, and since it is the second argument passed, the second argument in the function definition should also be declared as int. Now, in the function declaration, we only mention the function name and the data types of the arguments that are passed. If a and b are of the data type float, then write float in the place of int. Do the same thing in the function declaration. Now, let's say the data type of a is float and b is int. Then the same data types should be reflected in the function definition in the same order. Make sure the data types match with the function declaration and function definition. Now, in the place of a and b, you can also write c and d, meaning you can change the argument name with anything you want. It is not mandatory to use the same variable name as mentioned in the function call. For convenience, let's keep the argument names as a and b. This is how you write the argument list in the function declaration, function call, and function definition. Now, let's talk about return type. It simply means the data type of the variable that is to be returned. In the add function, we are using these arguments to find their sum. If the variable sum is declared as int, then the return type will also be int. If it is declared as float, then the return type will be float. Remember, the data type of the container variable should be the same as the return type. So, This is how we write the return type in the function declaration and the function definition. You can pause the video and analyze them with the syntax explained earlier. By this time, you learned how to implement functions in a program. So, let's look into the programs. In this program, we have declared a and b as int. We have initialized a with 2 and b with 3. We are passing them to the function add, where we are finding their sum and returning the sum back to the main. The returned value is stored in the variable result, which is declared as int. And at last we are printing the result in the main function. You can pause the video and recollect the topics discussed before. Now, let's move on to the next function. In this function, we are not returning the sum. Instead, we are printing it in the add function itself. Note that if you are not returning anything, the return type will be void. Here, you will have to tell me in which way this program is being written. Yes, this program is written with return and without arguments. If you have got this right, feel free to share it with me in the comment section. Now, moving on, in this program, all the work is done by the add function. We are only calling the add function in the main function with no return and no arguments. So these are the 4 programs for each of the ways. Now let's see how to shorten this code. Instead of declaring another variable and returning that variable, you can simply return a plus b. And since the add function is returning an integer value, you can call the add function in the printf statement. Now, if you are wondering why we have written such a big program to simply add two variables, remember this is only to understand how the functions work. But functions can perform other complex tasks. Now, for the last part of the video, we will see what is void main and what is int main. If you write void main, there will be no return statement because void is for returning nothing. But if you write int main, you must return an integer value. So you will simply write return 0. This is a simple difference between void main and int main. I hope you're clear with all the concepts explained earlier. If you have any queries, ask them in the comment section. If you like the video, hit the like and subscribe button. Help your friends too by sharing this video. Thank you for watching.